and welcome to Rugby in Lockdown 2. Rugby in Lockdown 1 last week kicked off with Phil Davies, Paul Turner and Steve Hill, and that's still available on the rugbyjournal.com. These are going to be every week, so we're going to be here every Tuesday. This week, we're discussing how players are going to become rugby ready. So we've got Grant Beasley, who's Newcastle's head academy S&C. We've got Heather Fisher, England Sevens, and we've got Russell Earnshaw of the Magic Academy. So you'll see on the screen, there's a Q&A box. So please do ask any questions there as well. There's also a poll that's been launched as well about when you think the Premiership, should the Premiership start, declare the end of the season, or by all means have a little chat about that in the chat room as well. And we'll try to get through every question. We're going to ask each panelist first to give us a bit of an update of where they are. Then by the end of it, we'll go through all your individual questions. So we're going to start with Rusty. So first of all, Russ, do you want to give us a bit of a background, just for anyone who might not recognise your face, what you do, and what you've been up to since lockdown?
Yeah, cool. And my big face, as Heather called it earlier. I work for myself now, so I work with lots of different sports and kind of NGBs and players and coaches and a bit of business stuff, probably around learning and coaching and that type of stuff. And since lockdowns started, I've done my tax. Our garage is cleaner, and I'm spending a lot of time on Zoom. I think we were talking about earlier, I spent about 2 weeks getting fit, and that's tapered off slightly. So I think the kind of excitement of a bit of time to yourself and less driving is slowly wearing off.
So you obviously, have you been able to carry on your day-to-day? Because your work now, so you were with England for a long time, you were with England Sevens in the development side. Now you're working across sports, aren't you?
Yeah, and look, it's definitely changed what my work looks like. We would be doing less stuff. So clearly lots of it would ordinarily be on a pitch or in people's environments. There's definitely some remote stuff. So doing a bit of stuff I'm doing something with Arsenal tomorrow, a bit of football stuff this week, a bit of business stuff, but it's definitely, it's a different world really. Probably from a coaching point of view, it's actually the pause lots of coaches were looking for. So what I notice is lots of really engaged coaches, and probably for some of the players as well. And now I think we're starting to get quite excited about, and I think Carl's just put a question about it, but when are we going to start again really? So the stuff I've kind of been engaging in, lots of stuff with coaches around cross sport actually. So we were chatting earlier, we got Danny Kerry jumping on a call with some rugby coaches on Friday. Some real interesting stuff around teams with other teams. So I do a bit of stuff with Rangers. They're sharing some matches with Southampton, and they're going to give each other, kind of review each other's games and give each other feedback. There's a couple of very big rugby teams, I promised I wouldn't say it, but who are doing that on their coaching practice as well. So they're sending videos of each other coaching and they're giving each other feedback.
Oh, great.
So some pretty cool stuff going on. Certainly at the professional end, I'm also interacting with a lot of coaches who are feeling the pinch. So if you're a sessional coach, then actually finances, identity, it's a real tough time for people. So I'm kind of and one of the things we're trying to do is help support as many people as possible. Interactions with players a bit as well, but I think we're kind of seeing that, lots of cool stuff online. So in hockey, Jimmy Culhane's just done a real good series around hockey and skill development. Boeing, so Boing kids have just done some real good stuff, Boeing at home. So if anyone's kind of a parent or an adult that wants to be more agile, then I would look at Boeing kids. We've been speaking to a couple of other nations, and this will definitely lead on to returning back around. So we've been speaking a bit to Italian rugby because it's not cultural over there that you play rugby. And so the thought of kids going back and all the stuff that rugby values, so shaking hands, the third half as they call it, so connecting with the opposition, the contact, the rough and tumble. Will kids even go back to rugby is a question they're currently asking. So I'm sure we'll explore it here, but I've definitely been speaking to some people and thinking about, like, what will it look like when we go back? Will it be tapered, especially rugby? I think we possibly need to think about what's the purpose of a rugby club? What could we do that would be kind of relatively corona friendly? Why do the kids come to rugby? I'm sure the other thing that'll happen when we all go back eventually is that it'll be like the end of the longest summer holidays, and we're going to have some pretty feral kids who are really desperate to just go crazy. And if we as coaches start putting them in lines and telling them what to do, they might not come back the week after.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's probably some of the stuff I've been exploring over the last kind of few weeks with people.
I mean, that's interesting with the kids thing, because you kind of feel that if rugby plays it right, this could be huge for the game, because if rugby makes it accessible for all these people who are looking for their kids to go and do something because they've been around the house and limited, rugby could become accessible to a whole new audience.
Yeah, there's a couple of things kids are getting the opportunity to do at the moment. One is to have autonomy. So they're actually doing some pretty cool stuff. We can just need to go on social media to see that. They're trying new skills. So I'm looking really pleased as punch, quite frankly, about trying some new skills.
Yeah.
But then what you said, I mean, we've got to understand, why do they come to rugby? So they don't all come to rugby to win matches and smash into each other. They come because of the social side of the sport, because of the values it teaches us, because they can make friends. And so we can still do all of that stuff, probably in more of a cross-sport way would be my view. I think we're going to have to adapt. So I'm suddenly trying to rack my brains of what, so kick tennis. You could play kick tennis with 2 meter kind of boundaries. That would be perfectly feasible.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to have to probably be quite creative. I know that I'm hearing lots of coaches who are going through this process now, because in our head, we just have all our normal rugby practices.
Yeah. Yeah. And you talked about the other sports. What, just generally as well, because not everyone is aware of your work, but what are you bringing from rugby to the other sports? Because your coaching background is purely rugby initially, and then now you're working with football and hockey. What are you actually bringing across, or what do you and Fletch bring across to other sports?
It's a great question. Was that what are you bringing across?
Yeah, an exclamation mark next to the question mark.
Yeah, look, I think once you start to go and spend time in other sports, and I would alongside, you would always have the imposter syndrome of, oh my God, what am I going to bring to this sport?
Yeah.
And I'll be honest, you see the same problems across every sport. So practice design, coaching behaviours, what's my coaching craft? Lots of NGBs would have gone down the more games-based approach. So hockey have golden thread, rugby have gone kind of the age grade stuff that's more games-based. And so people are then struggling to coach within games because they feel almost redundant. Definitely some stuff around co-coaching. So how do we work together as a coaching group?
Okay.
Parents, it's the same problems. It's just slightly different sports.
And when you're like you said, you're still liaising with these other sports, what are they saying about it? How different is rugby in terms of starting up compared to other sports, and what's the talk within those industries?
Yeah, so I was on a call earlier with someone from Sport England, and we discussed this. So they're already trying to get a temperature gauge off parents around this stuff. So there was some chat around, actually people are quite nervous about swimming. I think it's interesting because there's the financial aspect of speaking earlier to a rugby club, and hopefully they get their subs in time, and they're reliant upon the summer for weddings and functions and all the stuff that you don't necessarily think about that's associated with a rugby club. So they've definitely so hockey, I think we were really proactive. We kind of in January started to go, right, we've got a feeling this is going to go online. So what can we do from an online delivery point of view? How can we adapt it? And so we've got April, May, 700 odd coaches engaged in online courses, which is pretty cool. Yeah. I think the other thing we've all got to be mindful of, and this came in the discussion earlier, is as an NGB, make sure you're still valuing the volunteers because you want them to come back as well.
Yeah.
So they would, I just was speaking again with Danny Kerry at hockey. I said, well, could we do something where some coaches can, do some stuff? And yeah, he's like all over it, really want to help. So yeah, I think people are starting to imagine there's going to be a new normal, and they're going to have to try and predict what it looks like. Because of the contact nature of our sport, I think, we're definitely going to be lower down the line than, running or cycling or sports that are more individual. And that's where Italy's concerns are, that the kids will go to the individual sports rather than the team sports.
Yeah. And also on the wider scale, so obviously you mentioned there about coaches doing more coursing. This is a good chance for coaches to upskill, I guess, in many ways. And also the wider game. So you're involved in like a World Rugby. So tell me about your involvement in terms of looking at the rules and all that side of thing.
Yeah, I think they probably decided they would want a maverick on their group. So they got some pretty cool people on the group. So Joe Schmidt, Ian Foster, Wayne Barnes, Jaco Piper, Victor Vito. So Josh Beaumont. So players, coaches, referees, just to look at the game, and especially around the breakdown. So it's become a bit of a car crash in recent years.
Yeah.
And do we need to change the laws around it, or would we want to, which is the route we've gone? We haven't gone, we want to change law because that takes time. We've actually gone just more guidance around, this is how it's going to be refereed. So just stricter on the ball player taking the ball in, like releasing the ball, the tackler getting out of the way, the person who's the jackler, as he's called now, having rights. So I think it'll be interesting times. From my perspective, critical, the youth game at the moment, because it often mirrors the adult game. You're seeing a lot of kind of people off their feet flying in and all the problems that brings. But I'm also quite excited because I think it'll bring back a contest. So Richie McCaws of this world, the Tom Currys, the Ben Earls, they'll have some opportunities. And I think teams are also going to have to start to think about how they keep the ball alive. So how they play more like Fiji Sevens. And it'll also open up the kicking game, obviously, as well. So, I mean, it's interesting times because I think lots of coaches are also trying to predict where that'll go as well. I think the reality is and it's always interesting. You always look back and go, "Oh, it was different in my day," but I now look back on some of the old games and think, how were we allowed to do that? So the game is so much safer than it's ever been. I think the reality is people are bigger, stronger, faster, fitter, better trained. And so we just probably needed to tighten it up around the breakdown, would be my view.
Yeah, and when you have those groups, how does it work? Do World Rugby present a topic and then you all discuss, or what's the actual happens when that sort of group of people get together on one of these?
Yeah, so it's initially we look at what the problem is. The whole point of having referees, coaches, everyone is just diversity of thought. Probably that's why I'm there. And then we go, what are our thoughts? We then bring them together. We bounced around some stuff. We then went and met in Paris and kind of presented it and get kind of interrogated around it.
Yeah.
And then we go, look, this is what we think we'll do in the first instance. And if this gets refereed, and we support the referees and we support the coaches appropriately. And the good thing for me really was the referees were really excited about it. The players recognise it's necessary. And the coaches, I mean, fair play to Joe Schmidt and Ian Foster. They spent most of the meeting trying to work out how to beat it. The coaches, I think, realised that it was critical for the game. And what we've got to recognise is that the international game it's a tiny percentage of the game. Yeah. So we can't just be basing our stuff upon that. So I think I would have probably brought hang on, what about the under-12s type mindset to this as well?
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, let's move on to Grant. Thanks, Russ. And Grant, so obviously your season ended quite abruptly. Tell me what's happened with you and up at Newcastle.
So excuse me. Last game of the season essentially was Bedford, which was the middle of March. Since then, the players, the staff, we've been furloughed, so we pretty much have to leave the players to their own devices to crack on with the stuff. Before the furlough period, put some resources for them together, things to follow. But during this time, we have to trust that they're going to crack on and sort of keep themselves in good enough nick for whenever the season does restart. So yeah, that's what it's like at the moment.
What was it like? Because you obviously found out that you were promoted when, did that take a bit of a shine off it? Was there any celebration or anything, or what happened?
Well, at the time, it was quite delayed in terms of when we found out we were promoted. So nobody was around the club, nothing was happening. Everyone was at home doing their things. So actually, apart from the announcement, there's very little else to it. Yeah, I mean, you don't necessarily want to be promoted in a way where you don't play all the games, and we wanted to go through the season unbeaten. But at the end of the day, the goal was to get promoted. So obviously we've done that. So that's a positive and puts us in a good place for next season. So everyone is on furlough. So the senior academy, S&C, as well as yourself as well. So that means, would you trust the seniors or the academy to be following the programs that you set beforehand? I think there's some different challenges. I think the older guys probably know what works for them better. So in their experience, they'll know what they can do, how much of it they can do, and I think they'll be guided by their experience. I think some of the younger guys would hope would be sticking to what we'd put out for them. Just in terms of their experience, I assume they need more guidance because they just haven't got that time under their belt. I guess for the older guys, it's slightly easier for them in terms of their training. So their training residuals, so the stuff they hang on to stays around for longer. So their strength, their aerobic capacity, or some of the younger guys who haven't had that training experience under the belt, it might dip a bit quicker. So actually the younger guys will again be the ones who need to keep on top of it a bit more.
Because obviously the programs are going to be different, because you're looking at development over maintenance for some of them. Because if you were talking with the older guys, then it's maintenance trying to get through, and then these academy guys are developing. So it must have been quite hard to develop things and say, right, this is what you're going to do for however long.
Well, that's it. It's however long, we don't know. So I mean, previously, so before pre-season started, previous seasons, the guys who were coming into the senior environment, they would have a program to ramp them up into when we start, and that would build over. They'd often get a bit of time off before the end of the season, just how their season happens to finish, and then when the senior guys have got their off season, they'd have a bit of time to ramp up. But obviously, we don't know when things are going to start, so the challenge is how to get those guys to ramp their stuff up when we don't know when it's going to start, and when we're currently all sort of sat at home.
Do you think it's an advantage, because we don't know what's happening with the Premiership, so all of us is theoretical, but in theory the Premiership seemed quite determined to sort of do something, whatever that format might be, whether it's talking about coming back in June and playing series of games at Twickenham or whatever it might be. How does that leave Newcastle when you guys aren't involved in that? Or how would it, in theory, leave? Would it be a positive or a negative?
I mean, assuming that we could start training when the Premiership clubs can, I guess that would give us a massive, a much longer pre-season than what they would get by the time they have to finish the season, get a few weeks downtime before the Prem season might start again, whatever date that would be. I guess we would have an extra however many weeks to make some physical games. I guess the disadvantage would be that those teams would have been playing together for however many rounds of the season are left. They get a few weeks off, then they're sort of back in fairly quick. So in terms of team cohesion, they might have a more cohesive team, but in terms of some of the physical games, we may potentially, if we get a longer pre-season, then have a slight advantage there. But I guess there's a trade-off for any of it.
Is there a point where, because at the moment the programs would be based on a closed season, so this is because this is the end of the season for you guys, so that's the program you've got. But at some point, without even knowing, you're going to have to change. The program's going to have to change in order for them to just not become like the rest of us, get their sort of corona bodies on.
Yeah, it is. But again, it was just without any dates and without knowing when things start up again, it's really different. Again, we're limited in what we can do because we're not at the club, we're not around the players, we're not working at the moment in the furlough period. So it's quite tough to try and judge that, and we kind of have to keep our fingers crossed that the players are sticking to what was put out there before and keeping themselves in in decent enough shape. And again, there's challenges with that. So it's access to equipment. It's what they've got. So it will be challenging for some guys. I guess some of the older guys will have stuff at home. Some of the younger guys might not. And I guess we're going to get guys coming back in whenever we do in varying different states of conditioning.
Yeah, exactly. And
this would, I was going to say, and knowing Grant well, I mean, this would also be really hard for you, Grant, because you don't have an end date, and lots of S&C people will be quite processed, and you don't even have a beginning. You've just got an infinite pre-season at the moment, so you may not play rugby in 2020.
Yeah.
Sorry to drop that on you.
No, that's true. I can't really say much against that. I think the main thing from us is we just hope the players are keeping on top of the stuff. Because actually, you can do stuff without necessarily all the equipment. You can do stuff to mitigate any losses or mitigate a lot of the losses in your strength and your fitness levels. But it's just hoping that the players are keeping on top of that stuff.
And I know this isn't your area as well, but maybe Russ, you've heard. What about the sort of recruitment for stuff like this? How do people? Do we know players just not being signed? What if someone's at the end of a contract? I mean, Russ, have you heard of any of these sort of bits and pieces?
I did a podcast with Ben Earl yesterday, who would be one of those, so he's kind of in the middle of Saracens and Bristol. He can't move house at the moment. He's trapped in Kent. I think they would still not have clarity on it, even those guys. I've heard, if they've signed by July, then if there was some games. I think the reality is it's going to be pretty tricky to put on those games. So the stuff I'd heard was top 4, middle 4, bottom 4, semi-final, final, because we need to get the 6 for Europe would be the kind of solution. However, we chatted about it earlier, you would need to test coaches, you would need to test lino and referees and anyone that was ground staff. You would, unless you had immediate feedback from the test, you would have to quarantine until you got the results. And well, I'm not sure I can see that happening.
And either way, it's not ideal preparation for a first Premiership season back.
Yeah.
No, not at all. Again, so I mean, some of the stuff we looked at in the Championship is the matches are quite a different intensity to the Premiership. So taking the Championship season as a chance to, especially in training, try and prepare for the Prem season. But obviously, then you put a big old gap in the calendar, and then some of those sort of gains are sort of lost a bit. Some of the stuff you've been working towards.
And then you've got other things to factor in, like Six Nations games coming in, who knows when, and other things from the high level. Yeah,
exactly. So, the planning stuff's going to be pretty tricky, I think, especially from S&C's point of view.
Okay, thanks, Grant. Let's move on to Heather. Heather, how are you doing?
Sat patiently listen to you boys.
Well,
15's chat.
We all know that they're just the supporting acts, Heather. That's the thing. So tell me what your scenario has been, Heather. Like, so where you hold out, because this isn't where you normally live. You've kind of gone lockdown elsewhere. Tell me what's happened since this has occurred.
I'm normally based in obviously Teddington, Twickenham with England Sevens. Come back to Henley Narden, which is where my dad is. In the middle of trying to get a mortgage myself, but again because of contract issues, it's difficult. So kind of trapped there. Trying to pull the strings, and you know how it is. Yeah. So lockdown's been Henley and Arden. I'm fortunate enough to have my own gym down the road, literally 5 minutes, so I kind of can keep on top of my strength. I've got my legs to run, so I can literally do what I need to do. The probably biggest issue is probably having someone to do my skills with and just keeping my hand coordination going and all that type of stuff, dexterity. But for me, I think it's just I've become quite busy doing all the stuff that I think as an older athlete, all the stuff that I haven't had time to do. I'm kind of looking to do now and have been doing, because I was looking to transition after the Olympics. So I think it was quite hard realising, I understand that obviously the Olympics had to be moved, and I agree with it. It's just difficult in the position of being an older athlete where you kind of can see that finish line, and all of a sudden it might not even be there next year. It could be there. Do you hold on? Do you pull out? My body's in a good place mentally, physically. Where do you go with it all? So that's kind of difficult. And it's not an idea, playing rugby 70 is amazing. I love the game, but the talks we're having with England at the moment and Conor O'Shea's, how do we as a program, how do we actually bring all the athletes together so we can actually play the game? And that's very difficult. It's not like, you know, we spoke about, it's not like a Six Nations game where you can just go to France and play a game. You're looking at everyone across the world coming together, and you play 6 games over 2 days. So, you know, and then the fatigue and the pressure, immune systems are going to be lower, flying around the world. So you've got a lot to consider. So I suppose our world's slightly different to 15s, but again, it's still the issues of how you make it work, and can we make it work, and where's the future of the game going?
You personally, like, we obviously talked about this, and anyone who saw you in the Rugby Journal will know about this as well. But like, it was quite a big decision for you as well to go for this next Olympics. There was quite a lot involved in, you know, really pushing to go here. So where does this leave that kind of thinking? Because
I don't know. Look, the will to continue is there. The will and the want is there. It's whether mentally, I'll be coming out of the game at just gone 37.
Right.
You know, and then you've got things of, do I start a family? How does that even look? How does it work? Contracts, money coming in, income, a mortgage, all these things to think about that I have to think about because of my age. And you know, let's be honest here, it's not like the guys' game where I can just simply get a mortgage because I've got a great contract behind me. It's not like England 70s, is not like that as a whole, and female game is on the up still. So it's not equal in that department. So it makes my life a little bit more difficult in terms of my decisions that I'm having to make. All I know for now is that I'm training more for mental reasons than physical. And it's interesting listening to Grant, because obviously our S&C, you know, Ben, he's very much like Fisher. You're an older athlete, you know what you're doing. And as soon as I heard the Olympics were postponed, I took my GPS out and I was like, I don't need it. I don't need to be tracked. I don't need a chip on me. You know, I can just be myself, and I can do what makes my body feel good, because you've also got the angle of, whilst I'm pushing my body at 100%, say I'm probably now pushing it at probably 70, I'm ticking over at 70, but then it's now not creating any more injuries, not getting stiff, and then not getting issues because I'm not having a regular soft tissue, not having my acupuncture. So everything that I'm quite in terms of being a player myself, I'm very much like acupuncture once a week, soft tissues twice a week, I stretch. You know, there's certain routines that you do as a player to make sure you get onto the pitch as best you can to stay robust and ready for whatever, you know, is in front of you. And that part has been taken away. So I've just got to manage my body slightly differently because of that. But then also having the mental side of it, for me, I don't need to be tracked. I just need to run to feel good. And I know what I need to be hitting, but when I'm ready to go, I'll go. So knowing where I need to be, but then if I track back a year, I've got, you know, as long as I've got a good engine and my engine stays strong, then I believe I've got enough in my system from my training history to then add my power and speed on top when I'm ready to go, I hope.
Your goal at the moment is still the Olympics?
Yeah. It is still the Olympics. I'd be wrong if I said I wasn't. You know, I think, I'd love to make one more Olympics. You know, any athlete, any player's dream, and they don't come around very often, and this just shows they can be taken away like that. Yeah. So for me, it's I want to be at that Olympic Games, and I'd love to be represented and do my absolute best and be at my peak. It's just hoping. I'm 30. I think I'm 35 now. But as you get older, you lose track. So I think I'm 35. So I'll be going in at 37 probably. 36 in the summer. So 37. So it is another 2 years in terms of age. So I just hope physically my body can get there. I'm not someone who, if everyone knows me, I'm not someone who, I won't be carried. I won't be off my peak. If I'm off my peak, I'd rather not be there. If I can't be at my best, I'm not happy 90% or 8%. I want to be 100% on that pitch, ready to fire. Otherwise, I'm not right for it. And it wouldn't be right for the squad to be there unless I can be at my best. And
in terms of, I mean, actually, what is the average age of a sevens player? Because I mean, you're pretty much a machine to be still going. As I say, Russ, I don't know, you know better than me. Is that
it's low?
With the girls, isn't it? It's young.
It's about 18. I think the average is. I think you've got quite a few 18, 19-year-olds, but I think the average is probably like 21.
Wow! Oh, wow!
Yeah, I'm by far the grandma of this seven squad. And I just, to be honest, I don't really, I'm not someone who leads by being vocal. I just lead by action, and I just try and repeat, go, because I do believe you get to a stage where you can all talk in the world as a leader, but actually you set the standard for what you do and how you deliver on the pitch, and by turning up and about to be robust and go through the season, and that for me says a lot. So I try and lead in that way, but the squad is very young, and lockdown's going to be interesting because you've obviously got, I can look at it 2 years holding on, but I don't want to hold on. But then you've got 2 years where youngsters are ready to peak. They could be ready to peak in 2 years.
Yeah.
If given the game time, you've got that to think about. Then I relish pressure and love pressure and love competition. So I think as they get better, it'll push me to get better, which is great because that's what I need.
How are you feeding the need for competition right now?
To be honest, I'm all right.
Yeah.
I'm okay. Yeah, because I don't feel the need to. I box my dad now and again, and I keep him on his toes or push him back a little bit. And I've been getting out and running most days, and I'm just setting up a lot of content for other companies and doing stuff that way, trying to reach out, do story time and skills for Diddy Rugby, the real little ones.
Yeah.
I love doing that. It gives me structure to my day, and again, you can influence and inspire other little people.
Yeah.
And because in a work sport, like sport is the world, isn't it? Sport, you don't even see it on TV at the moment, but it brings so many people together across the world. It's a common interest that we all have and we all love, despite what it is. Sport is a massive thing to a lot of people, and you take away that from youngsters, it's like, who are they aspiring to be like? There's no one out there at the moment showing them how to do it. So rugby is pretty cool. And to be honest, it's mentally staying in the game. It's mentally being able to switch off, which I find quite difficult to do because I'm like, thoughts just flow everywhere. Yeah.
And how are the England team staying together? Is there groups? Is there, are you getting together via Zoom, or is it just, are you pretty much just working on your own, or how does that work?
We've kind of had it flexed. So a lot, we're obviously on furlough ourselves as players. But we've gone through different stages, I suppose, Alex. Group yoga sessions, group skill sessions, like, just putting a video together or content together of certain things. We're looking at doing we just turned Team GB before the lockdown happened. So we're looking at doing a Team GB quiz the weekend.
Okay, great. Yeah.
So, but I think a lot of it is also time to switch off now. So England have kind of said, look, keep ticking over. We're on a training regime anyway. In sevens, anyone who knows the game of sevens, you can't really switch off because you've got a lot of fitness. I know that when I go back, I've got a lot of work to do. So it's be able to take the time now. But then when we do get, when the ban gets lifted, we will then have time off as players to go and do whatever we need to do to mentally just get ready to go. And then we'll start developing our season, and then we'll have a few weeks off, and then we'll start to go again. So we'll split it up. I think if we manage very differently, to everyone in any club will vary it to who their players are and how their players are, the age of players and how their players are feeling, because I truly believe that if you get the mental side right of the game and you get the players right in a good place, the performance will take care of itself. So actually, you can't, there'll be coaches and S&Cs who want to get everyone together because they want all their figures back and they want all their spreadsheets back into action, but actually it's not. The world we play in, especially sevens, is chaotic. Yeah, we've got to be able to handle that chaotic world now as S&Cs and coaches, and maybe graphs and HRVs will look skew with. But if the players are okay and we can get a robust squad, and we can, build a strong pre-season. Pre-season for us doesn't really exist very much, to be honest. It's not like the 15s game where they'll have a good 3 months sometimes for pre-season. Our season runs all year round, generally speaking. Alex. So it's changed our game anyway. The first game of the season used to be Dubai. Yeah. In November, it's now Glendale, which is October. Yeah. So that in a way takes a chunk of the pre-season away for us. Yeah. And our qualifiers are in July. So if you think of it like that, we have a month off our feet and then we go again. So it just means that I think players and coaches will start to look at where we need to peak, as opposed to being on form for the start of the season and let's go. Yeah. They'll look to peak at certain times. And there'll be times of the competition I want to be there ready for.
So what sort of training, how much training are you doing at the moment? What's your schedule look like?
Running, doing aerobic most days, running a 5K nearly every day, Monday, Friday, and then weekends I do what I feel like. But Monday, Friday, I get out of bed and just run a 5K, whether it be repeated ones or, repeated ones of a sprint and then go to the next K, or whether it be 5K straight. I'm just trying to build my 5K engine, to be honest with you. And then I'm lifting weights, varying it from body weight to, I've got my own gym. So again, adding all my balance into it, all all my banded work, or pliers. I'm trying to do pliers by skipping, or by having all my hurdles laid out. So I suppose the only thing I'm limited to is pure speed, because I don't feel I've taken for granted the Lensbury grass.
Right, okay.
That grass is so nice that now I'm trying to run somewhere and I feel like I'm actually going to fall through a pothole, or like a little like dent in the grass and roll my ankle, which I haven't got time for. Or I feel like if I'm pushing off a road, I'm probably going to get run over by chasing the car down. So I feel like I've taken for granted the Lensbury grass. The only thing I'm probably lacking on is probably speed, in terms of repeated speed ability. That's the only thing I'm not training. Then I'm not afraid. I've been here before, but I took a year out last year to get to Tokyo this year. I took a year out last year, and I took my foot off the gas, and then I reproduced it again. So I'm not afraid of reaching those scores or those times. It's probably just going to take me time to. I think it's going to require more rest, really strategic planning by the S&Cs and the coaches to get me ready for Tokyo, because I don't feel I've got a whole. They were talking about having 11 tournaments and the Olympics in 1 year.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
Yeah.
So when you look at that would burn me out. That'd be enough to burn anyone out, let alone a senior player who's turning 36, 37.
And with the Olympics as well, I mean, that they set, I think, when did they say, October, or what have they said for the Olympics?
Summer 2021.
Summer 20. So obviously that's the longer period. How do you maintain focus? Because that's got to be the challenge, when you think, well, it's so far off. When are they next going to put the GPS? When are they next going to get me on the scales? I mean, we've heard here about Rusty's motivation that he gave up running after about 2 weeks. So, but from your side, you've still got a long way to go. So,
Yeah, I'm on the water, you're on the eggs. That sums us up, Rusty. To be honest, Alex, I think we fluctuate. Any individual at the moment will be lying if they said they're fully motivated. Yeah. And even myself, I fluctuate from being, right, I've got this, and I nail this week of training, to then sitting on the couch, looking at an Easter egg, thinking, oh God, I can't do it. Where is my purpose and where am I going?
Yeah.
I have those thoughts, but then what if I take performance out of it, I take the Olympics out of it, that is always going to be there. Just like the World Cup will always be there. There'll be tournaments always there. But even when you're in a 4-year cycle and not in COVID-19, you don't keep an eye on this picture over here, because if I look after this, which is now where I am, my present moment, then actually that will take care of itself. So for me, for the next foreseeable future, my aim is to mentally be in a good place. And I'm mentally in a good place when I go out running, when I get fresh air, when I put my head down and just go to work. And going to work is running for me. I find that really tough. So that is my work, and actually I feel better mentally doing it. So that keeps me an eye on the now. And then, once lockdown kind of is over, then I can move on to the next pitch, which is right. Now I can pick up the ball and get my repeated skills in. Now I can start to look at my speed aspect of it. Okay, I'm injury free. I'm in a good place, and my body's almost had a rest in a way, because I've took the foot off the gas a little bit. And then I can look at that bigger picture. The scary thing is for me, I suppose, is that I feel like I'm at an older age, and touch wood, there's no one here, but touch some wood. My body feels good, and I don't want to come out of the game injured. I want to come out on my terms. That's really big, I think, for any player. Yeah. And knowing that the Olympics could be there, and not certain that it will be there, what am I carrying on for? But then I've started this journey setting out to be Olympian, and I'd love to finish on the Olympics. And that's where my head's at. And it takes a strong head to stay there. But at the same time, I'm a player who's always had balance in my life. I do believe as a player, you have to have balance and other things in your life. You can't just all be rugby. I'm all for rugby, and when I'm in rugby, I'm 100%. Yeah. As soon as I'm off the pitch, I'm looking at emails, different content, different companies, different brands, how I can spread and how I can do different things. Because the more I do, the better player I feel I become, because I'm switched off, and then I can switch back on better. Yeah. So I'm a big advocate for balance. Yeah. And it's now a time for those younger players who are going, Fish, what we're going to do? I'm like, get something else in your life. You can't just be rugby. Yeah, but I don't know what else to do. You've got time. Go and find your passion, and go for it. You've got to, because you can't all be rugby. And this is proven. Sport is massive. But in the bigger scheme of world health, sport is only a little piece of the bigger puzzle.
And what's that for you? What is that other thing for you? Because just to highlight another issue is that as you talked about, you're coming towards the end of your career, and there hasn't really been any support for the women's game. You're like this first generation of players who play professionally, and I don't know how the RPA works for you guys, or it doesn't work with you guys. But tell me a little bit about that you're going through at the same time.
Well, to be honest, the fact we're being furloughed, so that helps in a way because they can still manage to pay us. It is frustrating that because you come out a certain gender, you don't get on the same wage packet, even though the effort from a female is probably more so because you have to prove yourself so much more so and do so much more. Sorry, guys, but it is true being a female. That is frustrating. I've noticed that. But in terms of the RPA, they've been as supportive as they can. Our psychologist has kind of sent videos across of how to deal with uncertainty. Simon Amor, Conor O'Shea have done everything they can, and Charlie Hates have done everything to try and reassure the players that we've got your backs. The problem is, this is bigger than rugby. Like, Rusty and Grant said, it's taken over the frigging world, isn't it? So as a player, you're used to being, I suppose at my caliber in terms of my age, I'm used to being uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So actually, I'm okay with uncertainty, but there's only so much support we can give you. But I think the biggest support has to come from yourself to get you a kick at the backside, if I'm honest. I think there are players in our squad and players, at any club where they're just happy being rugby players.
Yeah.
And they're happy being there. I'm someone who I've never been like that. I've always wanted more than rugby. I've always had that in my head. And I think for me, stuff like, like I'm doing a lot of reading time. I'd love to bring out a kid's book.
Okay, cool.
That's the way I'll go with that. I'd love to bring out, a series of books on amazing sporting people and put into kids' books. Things like this. And that's something I want to do. Bringing out my own range of hats and glasses and helping the world of people with alopecia and cancer. That side of it I'd love to do. Doing more, live videos like this makes more confident in front of a camera, whereas before I preferred radio. Probably got the face for it, but I prefer, I just want to be able to get my story across, but help and inspire other people. But I'm probably not one to go, hey, look at me, this is me. I kind of just like to be able to get on with it. Yeah. So it's given me opportunities to do everything else, look into mortgages, like Rusty said, sort of frigging account, which does my nut in. So I've got a lot in my life, but I also have wanted a lot. So for me, it comes back to players having passion. If players are happy like anybody else, sitting there and getting furloughed and still, earning money, having a drink, sitting in the sun, then that's the player they'll always be. Yeah. But you take the player out of the game and there's still a person to look after.
Yeah.
So me as a person, take the rugby part of me out, I'm a passionate person who wants to inspire and help so many different people to help them grow. And that's because I've had so many people help me grow as a person, as a player. And I wouldn't be where I was now. It's still in the game if it wasn't for Simon Amor backing me, giving me the year off last year. Physios, doctors and psychologists helped me get back into the game when I mentally needed that break. Having the support of other athletes in the World Series to talk to and come together, because I might be the oldest just about on the World Series, but there are other athletes out there who are like Fish, I'm getting on 32, mate, and I feel I can tell my engine's out. Yep. And like game face, isn't it? Like, no, I'm good. I'm 36 and still flying, mate. So
I think Serevi was like 37, wasn't he, or something?
Yeah,
so
39. So I spoke to Serevi in Fiji. I think it was last year, and he was a massive figure in this because he came over and said, "Oh, Fish, can we have a selfie?" I was like, "I'm sure I should be asking you for a selfie. This isn't right." So we had a selfie, and I got talking. He said, "Fish, why are you here, and what are you kind of looking? I'm seeing that you're playing, but you've left England." And it's amazing that, someone like a player of his caliber was interested in just talking to me, and he knew my whole story, which you don't realise people know. And he said, "Fish, I played my last World Cup at 39. He said, "Yes, I had to adjust everything. The S&Cs left me to it. They knew that I knew my own body. I didn't do what the 18-year-olds did. And I made it. I was still one of the best players out there at 39. But the problem is with sevens, this is in my heart as well. When everyone gets on the line, you get on the line and you go together. And that's the way it is. That you buy into that culture, you buy into the values of the squad, you buy in that you're doing it for the mate next to you and you're looking after your teammate next to you. I'm a massive advocate for that, and I love the individuality. You need that in the squads, and that is somewhere where rugby could go even more so, and it has to change the game. You've got to have that individual, approach. But there is a part of me that goes, when everyone gets on the line, I know the best thing for me is to walk inside and go and have a shower and chill. And so sometimes my trainer's like, Fish, that's it, you've done now.
Yeah.
Like, shit. But I know I had to keep thinking in my head, to get me where I can be for myself, to get me the best to be there for the squad, I've got to do what I need to do.
Yeah.
And that takes a certain head and logical thinking like that, especially when you're in the thick of it as well. So there's that side of it. But I think, I've had some solid conversations recently with Conor O'Shea and stuff and Charlie, and I know they'll be eager to back me to get me to Tokyo. And you know what, Alex, if Tokyo doesn't happen, I don't believe that medals or money should make you. You don't, I don't believe that a certain medal should then change your personality or money should change you. I'm truly in the stories of people, and I think if I think of that and take it as it is, I'll do my best to get there. If it goes out of my control and it doesn't go ahead, I've done my best and I've supported that squad and I've been alongside that squad, and it's just the way the story is supposed to finish.
Brilliant. Good. Well, I reckon you'll get there. I think you'll be fine. No problem at all. You got
I'm here, Fisher. We'll be having this conversation in a few years about 2024. You'll be going out. I might just make it.
Yeah.
I've never met anyone who's I've never met anyone who's driven as Fish.
Yeah.
In the men's or the women's game.
You must have. I don't believe that. I actually don't believe that.
It's true.
A question for the whole panel, really. So, on the Q&A bit. What do you think? We all talk about, like, there's been lots of different clubs coming out with how many weeks to prepare before the next action. Some said 4 weeks, some 3. But what kind of is rugby ready? Because I think all three might have a bit of an answer to this, that it's not just the physical, that you could still run as fast or as strong as you are. There's the match sharpness, the skills, and the mental side. So is this a case of getting all these three, and how do they do it? And how long is everyone going to need before they can actually play rugby again?
I guess.
You're going to start? Oh, Grant, there you go.
Yes, so, I guess the challenge is traditionally you look at most pre-seasons, and almost like the S&Cs get the first 3, 4, 5 weeks, however it works for the majority of their stuff. I guess the challenge will be if it's a short pre-season, how we balance that out. So we'd be used to having 3 or 4 weeks to ramp stuff up to get lads physically in a good enough place to then push hard on the rugby stuff. But I guess if we have that taken away, I guess there's going to have to be a much more collaborative effort from the S&C and the coaches to build a program that integrates everything. Yeah. I do think it'd be a good challenge, and I imagine it'd be something that Rusty would be fairly hot on in terms of actually can we get everything together as opposed to separate and stuff, and just working in our little bubbles almost.
Yeah, I mean, something to think about is, like, Olympic sports do this really well. So they just work back from the game, so work back from the demands of the competition, and often in our sport we don't do that particularly well, or we don't integrate it particularly well. So Eddie's whole philosophy on training around, tactical periodization and what a session looks like, so it incorporates the physical, the mental, the tactical, the team cohesion would have definitely influenced some of the coaches. And I think I would always want to expand the problem. Let's say, you had a month, so I gave you a month's pre-season, what would you do? Well, suddenly you have to think differently about how we integrate stuff. How do we build cohesion in our team? Yeah. So the two things I wrote down immediately were like mental demands of the game, like that's pretty critical, generally. And then the team cohesion, how would you develop that really quickly? And you wouldn't develop it by having the forwards train over here and the backs train over here. Yeah. As an example, they would be much more integrated. Like Fletch just did a podcast with Joe March, and he said generally the backs and forwards are together most of the time. So I think we would have to adapt our training. It would be more like the game.
Do you think there's going to be a big mental impact on this? Because people haven't, there is a certain mental strength that's required. I mean, Heather, you're probably a better place to answer this, but what kind of impact this will have on people when they actually come back together in the group scenario, getting ready for contact, getting ready for rugby?
I think it's a great question, but I think a lot of it has to do with the maturity of the player. Yeah. So I think if I work my way from a younger player and the younger players I've spoken to, They're worried about contracts. They're worried about opportunities. They're worried about the body. A lot of them have got like overuse injuries. They're worried about those injuries.
Yeah.
And it comes back to Grant, which said earlier, you've got to be able to trust your players to get themselves in the right place. But how do you trust a player who doesn't know? It's not because they're lazy, they just don't know. So it will be an interesting one. But I feel like now in my program, for instance, I do a lot of balance work and just about like keep my stability through my ankles, little things like this, shoulder work, just stability again through the shoulders, stuff that you can still do to take charge to make sure. If I had to go make a tackle tomorrow on a World Series, I feel ready.
Yeah.
So but if you speak to younger players, they're not in that position. So, like Grant said earlier, the S&C and the squad belong to the S&C. It truly belong to them for like a good 6 weeks. Sometimes we've had 8 weeks of just pure pre-season. And you know that when you get back, you're not scared about having time off, Alex, because when you get back, you're going to be progressed.
Yeah.
It will still, the start of the season will still be the start of the season. And even if you're not ready for the start of the season, use that game as other knowledge, don't you? Use that game to apply you for the next game. So you don't have to be ready for that game, which comes back to what Russell said about having certain points where I work backwards. That's how I do it as an individual. And I'm sure a lot of people work backwards. But I like to know, here's my end goal. I'm here now. But I think there'll be more demands on this. Will give players, this time off we've had would have given players trust. What shape are they coming back into? And I think it will almost give actually, you guys have been trusted. Whereas before, I think they would go, oh, can you guys keep your shape in 2 weeks? Yeah. You've had now no chance. You've had no input, and it is what it is. And you guys have kept yourself in great shape. And for that, we really trust you. And I think that will act as almost a positive with the squads around. Yeah. I also think because you've had time off, and it can be so intense in the bubble that we're in, you have a lot of personalities clashing and all this, and we have personality traits and profiles. I think we're going to be excited to get together to go, right, we are on this now. We've got a goal. We know where we're going. Let's go. So yeah. I don't think mentally, I can only speak for our squad, mentally, I think Reading players will be excited to get back to play. Yeah. And that's a given. If you're in the game of rugby, the rugby family's like that. I think you'd be excited to go and play. Yeah. It's managing the younger players to get them robust. Yeah. And the older players, managing them so they can be ready for when they have to actually go. So you've got 2 times.
Is that something you're aware of as well when it comes to conditioning the players, like where their mindset is and how they keep themselves busy? Because obviously you've got, as Fisher just sort of alludes to there.
Fletch, come on,
Alex. as she alludes to there, it is about the mindset as well, but it's, there's a lot of inexperience, and you've got a lot of young guys as well. There is that something you're taking into consideration?
Yeah, it's definitely something that's into consideration. However, I actually, like, knowing the guys I work with, I can't imagine how excited they're going to be to actually get back in the mix and be able to get out and do stuff. And I can't think of a group of players who I've actually worked with who, having been away from it for so long, wouldn't be excited. So you think back to the first day of pre-season, most days everyone's been away for usually 5 weeks, and everyone's usually pretty excited to get back in, and we're talking a period of whatever, 12, 15, however long it's going to be. I can't imagine there's many professional players who won't be excited to get back in. I also think to the guys who've maybe had 3 or 4 years of just professional rugby, where it's day in, day out of training, they might have had a few injuries, they've spent however long in rehab, to have a period off where they don't need to think about it. And they can just, as Fisher said, just do what they need to do and come back in. I actually think you'll get some guys who are pretty excited to just have had a bit of time off without having to think about, right, in 3 weeks' time, pre-season starts. And I think actually mentally a lot of people will be in quite a good place when they come back to know that they can get back to it.
Just going to go some questions now we've had. So this one's from Mike Barber, who's from Clifton. We've got a large squad, and some of these boys have been inactive for well over a month now. How do we as a semi-professional club manage their return to normal in a rugby context?
I guess one of the biggest things you can do now is make sure they're doing something at the moment. So just to give you like some numbers on it, like there's been studies done where you've had at the end of the season, you've had some guys do absolutely nothing. Some guys have done just like 20% of what they've done. And the guys who've done 20% of their training have lost 50% less than the guys who've done nothing. So actually to be doing something now would help you when you come back. And then I guess the other thing is when you come back, what are you preparing for? If you're preparing for a 30 game season, you can go at the players really hard and try and get them back into good shape, but that'd be quite attritional. You'll probably lose a lot of guys because they're not ready for that. Or you can just play the long game and go, actually, the first few games, we're going to be undercooked, but actually by 5 games in, we've still got our full squad available to us. So I definitely are on the side of caution, just try and build things up gradually. And you've got to remember that every other team's going to be in the same boat. So every other team in your league will probably be in the same boat. So some might push a bit harder earlier, but they'll probably lose a lot of people as well. Yeah. Just trying to find that balance depending on where you scored. I'll see how they react to what it's like in the first week, the second week, and then sort of push accordingly.
Yeah, and there'd be lots of other things they could be working on. So they could be working on their cohesion. They could be giving feedback to coaches on last season. They could be split into little groups, and they could be planning pre-season independently in groups of 4 or 5 and see what they come up with. You could be sending games to other teams. So in that league, there'd be videos of games, so they could send some games to the league above and go, guess what our training looks like. So you get some real naive experts. You could think about what you do when the ball's out of play. So 50% of the game, the ball's out of play. It's significantly less in sevens fish. So I apologise, but in 15, I wish it was. Yeah, the longest ball in play for a World Series match last year was 13 minutes 20 seconds of a 40-minute game. That's pretty mind-blowing. So they could start to have conversations around, well, what do we do when the ball's out of play? Coaches could start to have a think about things like halftime. Have we always done what we've always done? How do we know if our halftime's successful? Are we just winging it at the moment? What does our warm-up look like? Are we doing what we've always done? So I think it's a real good opportunity to press the reset button, and where I think we're starting to get to is, can we co-create more stuff with the players? So Fish has spoken eloquently about, trust, and Grant's spoken about players taking responsibility. Then, well, let's bring them all the way in. Let's get them thinking like coaches. Let's get us thinking like them. So I think there's some real good opportunities to do the stuff we just normally don't have time to do.
I think as well, this time in lockdown is like you just said, all that is spot on. But then you don't know what state players are going to be returning into in terms of mentally. So has someone had COVID in their family and passed away? Have they had issues close to them with friends, or you don't know what situation they've been locked down with. So I think once you know mentally where the players are at, then you can start to plan all that. And there's nothing stopping. You don't just take off your English shirt and become a different person. It's embedded in you, isn't it? Your shirt is embedded in you, and you're a rugby player. It's what your identity is. So you don't just take your shirt off and stop working. You're still body aware. You're still nutritionally aware. You're still mentally aware of what you need to do and how to help yourself. There's so much out there in terms of tools we can use as players and coaches to help ourselves. Just because you're not physically on the pitch doesn't mean you can't mentally or physically visualize yourself back on that pitch and do all your skills. There's so much more you can do.
And just something to think about from a coach's point of view, like we might become more of a counsellor when we come back. So we might have to be better at listening and noticing and supporting people, because there's going to be by the time we get out of this, exactly what Fish said, some people will have had some really tough times. I'm speaking to lots of people who've got relatives on front line, and some people who've lost some people, and they're going through some pretty tough times.
And a few more specific questions. One for Grant. Well, these two are kind of a bit linked. Grant, how would you plan your approach for load management and contact conditioning with the unpredictable scheduling coming up when you get the all clear to restart squad training?
Yes, I guess it will depend on what the schedule is. If you assume that timelines could be quite tight, then you really need to monitor what you do. So I'd start conservatively, and I'd first of all see what sort of shape guys come back in. Start conservatively and then monitor their response to it. If they respond well, then that's your opportunity to push a bit hard. If they don't, then maybe you need to take your foot off the gas. But a lot of it will depend on how the players come back. Sorry.
No, this one's kind of half linked as well. This is perhaps a more general one, because they sort of said, I wanted to ask, how soon in pre-season do the panel think you can introduce contact? Do you think there should be a time limit in the session?
Yeah, I think it. Sorry, go on, Rusty.
No, you go.
I think it'd follow a lot the same principle. So you never want to just expose somebody to something straight away. However you expose them to it needs to be gradual ramp up. So a lot of them might not have done contact for one of the quite a long period, longer than they've not done it before in a few years. So actually, it'd be pretty important to ramp it up gradually if you could.
Okay.
That process can actually start at home, then, can't it? All your body weight stuff. Just put in body weight, into bear crawl positions, into Jacqueline positions on the floor. Holding certain positions can start now. But I think a lot of coaches sometimes, at club level, expect players to come in with the knowledge, with fitness, and they're just going to play the game. So I think now there's just going to be more accountability to coaches to make sure they monitor everything as an individual. A bit no different to how other sports in Team GB do it. But there is now more ownership on that coaching team to make sure they look after the person first and they get that person ready. Because there's no set answer. Like, you could take 3 weeks to get ready to contact. If you progress it, you can take 6 weeks. But if a player's just come back from injury, or they're ill, they're injured, or lost a lot of muscle, that completely changes everything. So yeah, and fitness is a massive part of it. You get them fit and robust, generally speaking, the contact will start to take care of itself, because they've got the movement, they've done those movement patterns away from doing contact. You haven't got to do contact to be contact fit, I don't believe personally, but you need to be in a position where your body is able to accept the load and tolerant towards it.
Yeah, a couple of things I'm thinking about. One is, intentionally they tend to try and give the kids a few weeks in September where there's no contact, because they want to help get their bodies to adapt. Leinster would do 7 minutes of contact a week. Now, I'm not saying everyone needs to do that, but the thing I see in most rugby is we think it's touch or it's contact, and there's some stuff in the middle where we could be grabbing and holding up and ripping, and that leads to some better adaptation. I think we missed that out as coaches, and we think we'll hit a few tackle bags, which looks nothing like the game, quite frankly. And so how we coach contact is a real skill. We could reduce the area. We could, if me and Fisher played and it was 5 meters apart, then you would win. Of course you would, but you wouldn't get much of a run-up, so I would die. So it's often the run-up. And of course we could now, so with members of your household, Fish, you could go and wrestle your dad later today, and that would help prepare you for contact. There you go. Grant, you could go and wrestle Laura for a cake.
It's like wrestling a cheetah, he wishes. It's like wrestling a mouse.
Just one more question from would we now start looking to produce more skillful hybrid players to reduce the impact on players and prolong playing careers, and move away from the huge impact tackle points?
And I think the professional game is different, should be different to the rest of the game. So the professional game has definitely gone down a route of size over skill in recent years, although some people are trying to change it. So Chris Boyd, notable exception. Why wouldn't you want players that are really skillful? So let's imagine that the 50-22 rule gets adopted in, let's say it's a year's time. It's currently being trialled. Then suddenly coaches are going to be saying, so can you kick Fish? And you'll be going,
sorry, Rusty, I've got 100% kicking record on the World Series.
Nice, 1 from 1.
Yeah.
And so why wouldn't you want just skillful players? And why are people not avoiding contact? So I look at it like this, and there's 7,000 square meters on a rugby pitch. If you get the ball and you run into 2 players or 3, which I see quite regularly, then you've done pretty well to find 2 players in 7,000 square meters. But the reality for us is, if we kind of work our way backwards, is, well, why aren't people as skillful as Fordy or Marcus or people like that? And it's because we put them in a position too early. We told them what they couldn't do. We told them they can't pass. We told them they're a forward. Sorry again, Fish. And then they immediately assumed forwards just do this. We banned them from kicking, and we just didn't think longitudinally. So in my eyes, and I say this a lot, I think we're scratching the surface on skill.
Yeah.
I think we are literally there's so much more possibility in the game. So why can't everyone be as skillful as Dan Carter?
Yeah.
And it's often coaches, and it's clearly players. And I'm seeing lots of players at the moment that are going out, practicing, sharing videos, wanting to get better, and then they come into a coaching session and the coach takes that away from them.
Okay, chaps, this is final one. I know no one knows the answer, but tell me when you think we're going to next see a live game of rugby being played.
In England?
Let's have England and the world. There's 2 different answers. Come on, anyone? Just a guess.
November.
Where do you think? November?
I'm going to say November in our country.
Okay.
I'm going to take a stab at behind closed doors, September.
I'm going November behind closed doors.
Brilliant stuff. Well, look, guys, thank you very much. You've been brilliant guests. Really appreciate you coming on. Next week, we've got the RFU's Rugby Development Director, Steve Granger, coming on. And so if you are from a grassroots club or you know a grassroots club that's having a real tough time, get in touch with us and we'll get you onto the panel. So we've got 1 space left and we want it to be grassroots clubs that can pick the brains of the RFU Development Director to see what's happening with grassroots clubs, which ones are under threat, how they can be helped. And our only other final bit is that if there's more ideas for other shows you want to hear about going forward, just get in touch. And as always, please subscribe to the Rugby Journal. We're like 2 weeks away from print, so we are actually going to have an issue, which is amazing. And we've got some amazing people in, including Russell's column, which is obviously unmissable, which he probably hasn't even started yet.
I didn't know I was doing a column, so that's exciting.
It's every issue. So there you go. So we're well organised.
I don't know that. I'm just
I'll do it for you, Rusty.
I might need it.
There you go.
Good reminder.
Right. Well, look, thank you very much, everyone, and hopefully see you all on a future panel. And stay safe, everyone. So thank you very much again to the panel.
Thank you.
Cheers, guys. Take care, everyone.
Stay safe.